Hello everyone, I'm Casper. I'm the founder of Testimony, where we help our clients make sure that they deliver their software fully cooked instead of half-baked. And here on YouTube, we help aspiring test automation engineers go into that profession one slice at a time. And today we are making here for the second part of our locators mini-series. Today we're going to take a look at XPath. We have already covered like very broad strokes about the XPath and CSS selectors in the first video, so I really recommend you to go there and check it out if you haven't seen it yet. There will be a link in the description of this video. And today we are going to take a much deeper dive into XPath and do a crash course of sorts, which will allow you to get into the subject without so much added fluff. So we won't be like over encumbering you with all the details and all the stuff that may be really difficult to understand and not really usable in the professional context. So today we are going to focus on the fun, interesting and important stuff. So you will be able to create your own XPath expressions in no time at all. So let's jump to our whiteboard. Today we won't really be using whiteboard all that much because we will focus on practical aspects. So we are going to talk about XPath, sure, but we are not really going to spend too much time here. We will only use the whiteboard to cover the 5 or so essential symbols that we need to know before we dive into the actual web browser and where we will actually interact with some elements, locate some elements, see how it all intertwines and how we can do fun stuff with XPath. But before we do that, I think that it is important to stop here at the whiteboard for a couple of minutes. I'm not even sure that it will take that long to learn the 4 or 5 basic symbols. So first of all, you should remember from the previous lesson that the most important thing to know for locators is that we are navigating a DOM hierarchy, which is DOM, Document Object Model. So it's a DOM hierarchy. If this doesn't ring any bells, I really recommend you to go to the first video and watch it or rewatch it if you have already, but don't really remember, because we are going to be using this a lot today. And you need to understand the basic foundation elements behind the DOM hierarchy. Like everything is a node. You have a tree of nodes of parents and children. You need to know that before we dive deeper. And it's really easy. So if you feel like you are lacking in that department, please go back to the previous video and check it out. But back to XPath. So since we know that everything is a DOM hierarchy, and so there is some root node, there are some children nodes, and these children nodes have another children, and so on and so on. And each of these elements may be like a div, an A element, or some other tag, HTML, whatever. You have HTML at the top because that's the root. But since we know that a website is a DOM hierarchy, it'll be easier to understand. And now you will see why we spent so much in the previous video talking about the DOM hierarchy. It's because today we are going to be specifically targeting the elements in the hierarchy. And now we come to the symbols that I have already hinted at the beginning of this video. So first of all, you need to know that we use slashes for going up or down the hierarchy. So it's similar to what you see when navigating folders, for example. So this is like, I would say this is the main hierarchy explorer. You can think of it like that. So the slash basically tells you to go down the hierarchy. You can also tell it to go up the hierarchy. We will cover this as well. But you use the slashes to divide your XPath expression into parts so that you know if you are going to the next node, the previous node, how they all come together to form an expression. Of course, it'll be way easier to understand when we see an actual expression, but now let's just keep it in your head that this is the main hierarchy explorer. And you can also use a thing called double slash, which means you can think of it as sort of look anywhere. Like I'm saying, don't be too intimidated by that right now, because this is just a primer where we'll go to an actual expression in a second. But also we have the dot, which is the current node, dot, which is a parent, so one up from the hierarchy. So that's the parent node. And last but certainly not the least, you also have the at symbol. So that means attributes. So that's really easy to remember because you have the at and it's the attribute. So I think that's a good mnemonic way of remembering that. So I would say that after we know this, we are ready to actually jump into the browser and see how we can locate some stuff. So just remember that. 1/ is going through the hierarchy, up or down. We'll see how we know whether we're going up or down. 2/ means look anywhere, so we don't care about going one level after the other. 1 dot means current node, 2 dots means parent node, and an at symbol means an attribute. So having said all that, let's jump right into the web browser. All right, so we have fired up Google Chrome. You can use any web browser that you own. So if you have a strong preference for one over the other, which I recommend you get over as a side note, because you will need to interact with different browsers when you become a test automation engineer. As you may already know, being a tester, that it is crucial to be able to go through the browsers and not really get too tangled up with one specific kind of browser. So I am using Google Chrome, and this is the browser that has the largest market share right now, and which I have come across to the largest extent over my career. So I recommend you do that too, because there's a high probability that you will be using it also, and that the test automation suite that you have will also be using headless Google Chrome. We'll get into that at some other occasion, of course, to talk about that in greater detail. But without much further ado, we are in Google Chrome, and we are going to do some locating of the elements. And to do that, I am going to go to our very own Testeroni website, which I recommend you do too, so that you can follow along and do the same things that I'm doing. So the website is testeroni.org. And here we are at our wonderful website. So the first thing that you should always do, and even though this is a presentation, you should still get into the habit of doing that, is to actually interact with the website as a human being. So you should, first of all, learn the website as a person before you try to do some locating and putting it into code. Because essentially what we are doing through creating some locators and doing stuff is you are teaching the machine how to interact with a website. And to teach it to do that, you first need to be able to do that yourself. So in order to do that, let's just scroll around. Let's see what happens. Okay, we see that there are some CSS animations. There are some text. Okay, there is some form at the end, some symbols. We can see that these are the links. What happens when we click the link? Okay, so it takes us to the next section. This is the submit button for the get in touch form. All right, so since this is a simple website, such a brief going over it is going to be enough. And even in more complex applications, very often you just need to get a hunch for what the elements do. You don't really need to, take a PhD in a specific website. So you can just go through it and interact with the elements, see what happens when you click, what happens when you hover over something, when you right-click, and stuff like that. Okay, so now that we have done all of this, we are going to take a dive into one of test automation engineers' best friends, which is the developer console. In more, I would say in most, or maybe in all modern browsers, the way to go into the developer console is to hit F12 on your keyboard. And this will fire up the developer console on the right-hand side. It may have not opened up the console for you. It may have opened like elements or sources or networks. We are going to have a couple videos on the developer console because this is a very important tool in your toolkit as a test automation engineer. So you need to know this, and you need to know what the specific tabs do. But we are going to have a separate series about that. Today, since we are focusing on locators, we are going to be talking about locators mostly within the elements and console tabs. So for the sake of this presentation, I'm going to enlarge it a bit. As you can see, another pane appeared. And I'm going to enlarge it a bit also, maybe like this, to make it more legible for you. This also made the website shrink a bit. All right, so you can do that by holding Control on your keyboard or Command on Mac and using the scroll of your mouse, or doing like Control plus, Control minus while you are focused in the developer console on the right hand side. All right, so now that we have this here, we can actually start to interact with the elements. And here in this element section, we can actually see the thing that so far we have only seen in abstraction. So far we have talked about the DOM hierarchy as an abstraction, as some kind of a tree. I was rambling about some nodes, some parents, children. Casper, what the hell are you talking about? So this is what I am talking about. This is the specific thing. Like I said at one of the previous lessons, you can also do Control U to bring up the source code, but very often it is not really more too legible. So I really recommend going to F12 to bring up the developer console and then to actually go to the elements on the right hand side. And so this is the code, the underlying code that goes into the actual website. So this is the code that the machine is fed, and then it renders the thing that you see on the left hand side. And this gives us a lot of interesting info because we can, open some nodes. As you hover your mouse over something, it colors the thing on the left-hand side. So we can actually expand this. And as you can see, each of these divs and HRs and stuff like that, it actually, when we hover over it, it highlights it on the left-hand side. So this is very, very useful. And then we can, for example, take this div and we have another div inside and another div inside. And there are, like I said in the previous video, divs all the way down. And then we are at the H2 finally. So this is this text. Then we have this P, for example. And so this is this text and stuff like that. So as you can see, to navigate to an element, a primitive, and by primitive I mean a singular element which we can pinpoint at the bottom of the hierarchy, so a leaf node, you actually need to go through that tree. So as you can see, when we want, for example, this image, we need to go to HTML, then go to body, then go to this div, this div, this div, then go through this, and expand this div, expand another wrapper, expand the div class inner, then we have two divs inside, we take the latter one, and then we have another div, and then we have span, and then finally we arrive at the image. So as you can see, a situation as simple as pointing a finger to something and telling another human, for example, yeah, I'm talking about this image of a man in a pink suit, turns to a pretty different kind of ballgame when you need to convey that to a machine. And so, in order to pinpoint this specific node, we need to go through a couple of divs in between. And now we are going to translate this to XPath. So let's take something that is not so deep into within the hierarchy first, for example. So maybe let's take this button. And this is a very important step that I'm doing here, because so far we were navigating this hierarchy on our own. We were going through this and kind of judging where elements may be. So we were hovering over stuff and praying that inside we'll find what we are looking for. But there is an easy way. There is a way easy way. You can, for now, collapse this so that you don't try to do that by hand. You just hover over the element that you need to locate on the left-hand side in the browser, just as if you were browsing the website. You right-click on it and you choose Inspect. In other browsers, it'll probably be called the same or roughly the same. Usually the last thing that you can choose in the menu that appears when you right-click. So we click Inspect, and when we click Inspect, suddenly we are taken to that specific node. So we don't need to browse through that by hand, which for large applications may first be pretty non-intuitive, and secondly, it may take some time, it may be really tedious, you may not be able to locate it very easily. You can just right-click and then click Inspect. Same goes for the text, you see. I just selected it, clicked Inspect, and suddenly we have the specific node that we were looking for. So we don't really need to do it by hand anymore. And so let's get back to the button element. And like you see, I just did Inspect. And we can see that we have a span containing the text inside. And on the outside, since we want the whole button, we have the ahref start class button, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, we have this button node located. All right, so now let's choose the image that we were interacting with before. And as you can see, we get the image again. And you may remember from before that we needed to go a lot of divs down to get to that specific image. And now we are going to select it using XPath and use the knowledge that we have so far to actually do that. And the first thing that we need to know is that if you want to provide XPath to the browser in an interactive mode so that it shows you whether you actually hit the target, when you go to the console, so that's the second tab in the developer console, you need to tell the browser that you are going to use XPath by writing $X. This $X denotes that what will follow in the parentheses is going to be an XPath expression. And so let's just have the parentheses. And I really recommend opening and closing the parentheses in the beginning, because then when you are writing inside, it'll dynamically show you whether you are hitting something. So let's see this. So first of all, let's do a very, very trivial XPath that does something like HTML. And as you can see, as I'm writing, it dynamically shows me that there is something that corresponds to what I'm looking for. So as you can see, when I did $X HTML with a slash, it pointed out to a HTML. And if I expand the thing that was returned and I hover over what was the thing that it found, there is one element, because you can see it is a array with just one element, length 1 array. So the first element in this array is the HTML. So this is the whole website. And why is it like that? Because we used the / /. So this is going from the root node and just chose HTML. And if we go back here, we can see that when we take the whole website, so the root node, and we go to the HTML tag, because this is what we wanted, we just wanted a HTML tag, we just get the whole website. So yeah, we wanted to point to a whole website, and we actually did. So very good. All right. And to just show you what I meant about closing the parentheses, if you try to write it down without closing the parentheses, when you have something like this, for example, you don't really know if it is correct or not, if it should be some other characters which may come in handy and as your expressions grow. So when you don't close the quotes and the parentheses, you are never sure if you are hitting the right thing. So then you must close it actually, and then you have the value. But if you, like in the last example, start with an empty expression surrounded by parentheses and quote, then as you are writing, it will show you that this is not okay, this is okay, this is not okay. So this is a huge comfort that you don't otherwise have. So I always recommend creating the skeleton of an expression first. All right, so we know that, and so let's go and locate something. Okay, so as you see, we have the HTML. All right, inside the HTML, we have the body. All right, so let's do body. And as you can see, body is also an element that is going to be locator. And then let's do div, for example. And let's see what it returns. Now it returns 2 elements. So we have one div with a wrapper class and the second div. So as you can see, also here, we have one div and we have another div, and we have located both of them because they are both under HTML, body, and then div. And so this is all fine and dandy, but it comes back to the problem that we had before. If we want to actually go to the image that we are trying to target, there's a lot of divs in between. So you may think, oh my God, Casper, do I really need to now jump between elements and console back and forth and do div and div and div and then tell it which div I even want and stuff like that? No, you don't need that. So now we are going to jump into, maybe first of all, I will also give you one cheat code for if you wanted to do that, which most of the times you don't, because this is really unstable. Like if one thing changes in the website, this may render the whole expression unusable. So I really don't recommend that, but it is a good starting point if you don't have any idea how to target something. This should not really be a problem, or not a problem too often, but still, if you need to do it like that, if you need to do it the way that we did a moment before, so you want to just be able to go deeper and deeper and then do another div and another div and another div, you can just, in the elements, right click on the thing that you are trying to target, do copy and copy for XPath. And then what it does is it gives you a whole series of nodes that it needs to traverse through in order to go to the element that you want it. So if you now surround that with $x parentheses, you can see that we have actually hit the image that we wanted. Great. So you may think, oh, wow, so that's so easy and so quick. Why do I need to learn all these various like and dot and stuff like that? Why do I even need that? I am set for my whole life. I can just right click wherever I want and I can create XPath from that. And it's not really that easy because, like I said, it's not going to be really stable. It's not going to be elegant, portable. It's not really going to translate well when there is some redesign of the website, for example. If we have all the selectors like that, if something changes in the website, like there is some redesign or some moving of the elements, this is very, very reliant on where the elements are within the hierarchy. As you can see, we are using these square brackets, and we're going to talk about that in a second, to denote which div we mean, because like you remember, when we did HTML body div, we had 2 divs. So if we want to go to the first one, and in this case, we do want to go to the first one, because like you remember, this is the first one, this is the second one, and we need to go into the first one to expand the node of the div ID wrapper to actually get eventually to our image. And so whenever we have this kind of ambiguity, we need to denote which index of a given node children we want to use. So in that situation, we may need to do div1, and then we will have the div wrapper, singular div wrapper. And this is why in this long expression, the browser actually told us to use div1, because this is where the image resides. The problem is if it is in some way replaced, or if it is not in a div anymore, for example, or if the divs are changed in relation to each other. For example, one div, then suddenly the div that was number 1 now becomes number 2 and stuff like that, then this whole expression breaks. And this is a recipe for a headache and for a massive one. Because when one thing changes, it may already be hard to pinpoint where exactly the problem is, because you have a lot of stuff here and you may not have any idea why it stopped working. But if a couple of things change and the order changes, you may be at a complete loss and you may need to start anew rather than just having it work. And you should remember that you should create your test automation framework in such a way that it sustains the trials of time. It shouldn't just be that any breeze regarding the design of the website is suddenly making your whole test automation suite go astray and to everything go red overnight because there was some change with a div, for example. So you don't really want to do it like that. But you can. There's nothing stopping you. So very often you will use stuff like that for like debugging purposes or stuff like that, but never in production. I beg you, don't do that to yourself and your future colleagues. Never use something like that in production, unless you actually have no other option, which in 99.99% you do. But this is an option. This allows us to look at the whole hierarchy. So this is the whole DOM hierarchy traverse down to the image that we actually want. And it also allowed us to see how to use the square brackets to actually point to a specific element. So this is also useful. And to also show it maybe even more, we can also see that, for example, if we take this part of the expression, without the trailing and backspace, of course, then we have this. So this is just one, but if we go one step further, we actually have 6 divs, because like we already saw when trying to traverse it by hand, this tree is pretty packed with divs. So you get a lot of divs in one expression. So this thing brings up an array of length 6. And so this is why it also uses the div3 here to actually pinpoint the third element. But I wanted to show you that again, even though we have already talked about indexing in a few moments ago, because one very important caveat here, we are not indexing starting from 0 in XPath. We do that in programming, and you can see that it even gives us an output, a return value for expression with a 0 indexed array. So you have an array of length 6. So normally in programming, you will have the first element be the 0th element, then the second element be the first one and stuff like that, because we're indexing from 0. So we go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 up to n-1, and not really 1, 2, 3 up to n. In XPath, we are going 1, 2, 3 up to n. So you need to remember that when you want to target this specific div, and this example we do want to target this one because it contains the image that we want to locate, even though it is number 2, it is number 2 in the array. So it is actually the third element. And so in XPath, we do div3, like you see. And to illustrate that, we do div3, then we have the element. So this may be a little misleading in the beginning because you use the human readable form of indexing from 1 to n in XPath, and you have the not really humanly intuitive way of indexing from 0 to n-1 in programming. But yeah, so this is just important to remember. And so now that we know this, we know how to index elements, we can get to actually build a more performant, more elegant, and an overall better way of targeting this element. All right. And so to target this element in a more elegant fashion, we need to look for attributes that may help us with seeing where this actually fits in. And you should remember from the locators lesson that the attributes we most commonly look for are IDs, because they are unique, some testing attributes, if they are provided by your dev team in your project, stuff like class, even though it does not really uniquely target an element, it still allows you to at least go for a collection that contains something that interests you, rather than just going through the whole hierarchy and having 60 forward slashes with divs all over the place and indexing of elements that are not uniquely targeted when just providing after a forward slash. So let's do it right here. Let's just look around the node that we are targeting and see if we can actually target the thing that contains an attribute that may be of interest to us. And so we can see that for this image, there isn't really anything that we can target. It has the source, but that's not really a good way of targeting the element, because the source may change. What if this is just a placeholder and the image changes over time? We don't really want to shoot something like that, because then we may get a lot of false positives or false negatives. The alt, it's not really ideal either, because if the image changes, the alt will also change, and it does not really mean that there is something wrong with the website. Depends on the specification, of course, and documentation, but in most situations, style is also a terrible idea because it's not unique at all, and also it may change. So okay, but since we are navigating through XPath, which allows us to traverse hierarchies, let's go up the hierarchy and see if we can find something there, because we can go down the hierarchy. As you can see, there's no expand collapse button right beside to image, so we can't really go to the children, but we can go to the parents. So let's go to span. All right, we have the span class, and the span class is frame, so this is already looking promising. Let's try that out. So let's do $X, and let's try to find all span elements which are of class frame. And to do that, we are going to use another element from our toolkit, which we have talked about at the whiteboard back at the beginning of the lesson, which is the // So that means look wherever in the document. So the magic of a // and you will use it a lot. I would say that you will use it in most of your XPath expressions. So the magic of the // is that it allows you to tell XPath what you're looking for, and also to tell it that you don't care how deep within the DOM hierarchy it actually is. And this is a superpower, because suddenly you don't need to go through the whole hierarchy. When we did that, if we wanted to select that span, we first needed to go to its parent, then its parent, and its parent, and all the way back to the root. And this is, like we said, really tedious, error-prone, and not really portable, and not really accustomed to change. But when you do // you don't need to do any of that. You can just look for all the span tags, all the span nodes within the whole DOM hierarchy. So let's try that out first. If we do / span, suddenly we get a lot of span elements. And as you can see, they are on very different depths of the DOM hierarchy. So the first one, for example, is here. So it's in a pretty shallow place. It's just a couple nodes down from the root. And if we go to that span, for example, which is the one that we are looking for, it's very deep, like we remember. So this one is actually that deep in. So as you can see, you have spans from all over the place. Those which are deep, those which are positioned shallowly. You have a lot of spans, and all it took to actually get all of them is to do // and span. And you can think, all right, so now I can just take the third 3 indexed elements of the array, which is the 4th element, and let's just do it right here. And it doesn't work. So there are 2 problems with this expression. So the first problem, which we're going to talk about first, is that it won't really return what you think it would. And the second problem is that even if it did, and it will when we actually fix it a bit, it's still not the way you want to do it. So first of all, why it returns some different thing that we expected. So the double forward slash is a little finicky in that it's not really so intuitive regarding the indexing part. So it does not really go through like you would expect it to. So it doesn't really collect all the elements and target the fourth one. In some situations, it may actually do stuff like it collects everything and then it gives you a full list of everything on the website. And it may actually return you an empty collection like here. Neither of these scenarios, of course, is ideal for you. And without going too much into detail, because I think it will only obfuscate the view for you. Just remember that if such a situation arises, it just means that the order of the operations that XPath uses for this specific expression is not something that you thought it would. But we know that this expression, double forward slash span, is working, and we know that it returns everything. So it just means that the indexing is a little finicky and it doesn't really work in that specific way. And in order to tackle that, you just need to surround the span in another set of brackets. And then we have the element that we wanted. Like I said, this may be a little tricky to understand, and this will only happen in such situations when you are using the double forward slash to actually use the look anywhere within the document, within the DOM hierarchy. And so I don't really think that you should lose your sleep over it. Just try to use it like you think you should. And if it doesn't work, just surround it in parentheses. So you tell it to first evaluate this expression and give you all the span elements, and then just add the index so that it targets the fourth element, which is index number 3. So we have now changed the expression to a form that is working. But like I said, the second problem is that even though it is working now, it's not really something that you would want to use. And the reason for that is it's still not stable. We have the collection of all the spans, and now it looks like that. But what if suddenly you have the sections rearranged? What if this section of what we do goes above the who we are? Suddenly, number 4 is no longer the image that we were looking for. Suddenly, number 4 is something from here or something completely new. So still, going through index as a rule of thumb is, in most situations, not a good idea. You should use something that does not change over time, or which does change, but only in major like releases, changes and stuff like that. Not really something that can be rearranged or may just be a small change in the design. You are not creating stable locators that way. All right, so now we know that we can do it. We know that there is a small caveat, but we know that we can do it, but still we don't know what to do if this is not the ideal way. So let's go back to the elements and let's look at this span once again. So it has the class frame. All right, so now let's try to address that. Let's clear the console. Yeah, that's better. Now we have the clear console. Let's do span, but we are not looking for index anymore. Let's open the square brackets, but we're not providing it an index. We're providing it an attribute. And one thing to learn about XPath is that for XPath, all attributes are created equal. All of them. It doesn't matter if it's alt, if it's ID, if it's a specific testing attribute, if it's class, if it's area label, whatever. All attributes are created equal for XPath. So, and we address all of them through these square brackets, just the same as if we were doing with the indexes. So we can do square brackets class equals, and then the class was frame. So let's do frame in singular quotes, because this is just like a good styling tip to not confuse with the outer double quotes. it'll still work, but you may sometimes come across problems when you need to escape the characters. So I recommend sticking to one kind of quotation marks on the outside and different ones inside. So when you do stuff like that, you are suddenly left with 4 spans. And as you can see, this is the first one, second one, third one, and the fourth one. So now we are left with less to choose from, but still it is not unique. And this is what we were talking about in the locators episode, that the class attribute is sadly not unique. So it does not identify the nodes in the hierarchy uniquely. So if you provided that the class name of frame, it'll contain a couple of spans, but it doesn't really still help our course, because if we just now do this with index number 2 and stuff like that, it still doesn't help, because we are left with the same problem that we were talking about before. So we are now shooting something, hoping that it will stay forever in this place, which it probably won't. And so we are asking for trouble. And so even though we could do that, this is also a good thing to see, that you can do stuff like that. And then let's surround that in the parentheses. You can select it like that, of course. So it's not like there's only limitation of 1 square bracket per expression. No, it's not like that. So you can use 2. And as you can see, have this square bracket, and then you can have this square bracket, and they don't really come in conflict with one another. We just needed to use the parentheses because we're doing the double / thingy. So we are selecting the proper element, the proper node, but it's still not a stable way of identifying it. Also, as a side note, we won't go too much into the details of class. This is not the only way that you can access classes, because since they are not unique, they are like bidirectionally not unique. So the fact that something is assigned to a given class does not mean that there are no other elements assigned to the class, and the fact that something is assigned to a class does not mean that it is not assigned to other classes. It may be assigned to a couple different classes, and for such situations, for some of them, we can use the contains method. We will talk about that later in this episode. For other ones, we need to use some more elaborate ways of using normalized spaces and stuff like that. I would really recommend you not worry about that right now. Just keep it at the back of your head, that there is a way to do that, but you shouldn't really clutter your mind with it right now. So for the time being, let's just remember that this is the way to address class, even though there may be more than one class. But back to our initial problem. So we have this thing, and we still don't know how to locate this image. So let's go one parent up again. And we have the div, and in this div, we not only have the class, and we have actually 2 classes. So this is the thing that I talked about a moment before. We have 2 classes here because they are space separated. We have the class of image and the class of fall, and we will talk about how to target that in a second. But we also have the ID. Hallelujah! We have something that is unique. Finally, so since we have the ID and we know that this ID is unique, then this is our anchor. You can think of this as your anchor point. You can think of this as the entry point to a singular way of identifying a way to the element that you are trying to target. And so we know that this is the ID, which is unique. So let's target the ID then. So let's do this. Let's take the div, and again, square brackets, ID equals image 06. And what do we get? We get the specific div that we wanted. That's perfect. So now we have an entry point without going through the whole hierarchy. It is unique. It is stable because IDs don't really change for no reason. Sometimes you may have dynamic IDs, dynamic classes, and this is a whole different ballgame. So let's not get into this right now. This is a crash course, a quick and dirty introduction to XPath, where we do simplify some things, but we make sure that we that you understand the thing and are able to build your own locators without too much clutter in your mind about different things. So you have this div selected. It is unique, it is stable, and it allows you to singularly choose the children of the element. And so you can do it like that. We have this selected, and what can we do? There is a couple of things we can do. So first of all, we can do /span. You remember there's this span one level down below, and then image, and voila, we have the image that we wanted to target all along this way. And it is located in a very clear and concise fashion. It is not a long, convoluted expression that is not stable anyway. It is short, it is elegant, it allows you to choose the specific thing that you are looking for. And even if suddenly this div was, changed to a completely different region of the website, it will still work because it is not reliant on the order of the elements. And like I said, I really, really implore you not to put too much faith into the order of the elements on the website, because with all due respect to the dev teams, it may change and it may change at the worst possible moment. So when you are doing it like that, it is specific, singular, and stable. 3 S's. So let's now think of a different way of targeting that. What can we do? Since we know this is a anchor point, what can we actually do to target this image without even these things? So you may remember that you can chain all the things that we talked about together, and they can all be chained within one expression. And so this // can also be used after it has already been used once. That it's not like prohibited by the XPath police. There is no overarching law that is preventing you from doing that. So instead of doing the span, you can just do another // and wow, now we have such a clean, concise way of identifying that, and we have the element. Wow, that's very cool. We went down from this very long, let's once again, let's remind ourselves how long that was. So we went from this thing down to this, and it is cleaner, more stable, easier to understand. Perfect. So what's not to like with this expression? So now we have a unique way of identifying that. And since we know that there is only one image inside, we just do this. We can also, of course, provide the index and have it like that, so that if we are worried that another image appears, which may be underneath this one, like and stuff like that, we can also target it in this way. But this is, I would say, the best way of targeting this element. And you may say, okay, Casper, but I see one more problem with this. And the problem is, now we are targeting a div with this ID, but what if there was no div anymore? What if the element that we attach the ID to was a different one? What if we only knew that the ID is stable, but we don't know that the tag that holds this ID is stable? What if the ID of image, even though we had a guarantee that we had, like we got documentation or some standard from our team that there is going to be an ID of image 06. We may not have a guarantee that it is attached to a div. What if it was attached to the span in between? In this way, this would really work. And we have a way for this too. And the way is the wildcard character, which is the asterisk. And the asterisk just tells you to choose whatever fits with your filter. So if we do asterisk here, it still works. And in this situation, we are not even targeting the div anymore. We are just targeting anything that carries an ID of image 06. And then we take the image. Maybe let's even do it without the index. So what we're looking for here is that within the whole document, we are looking for any node which holds an ID of image 06. And in the children of that node, regardless of how deep we go down the tree, we look for the img attribute and we return that very node. And so with just 2 filters separated by double slashes, we go down this whole long tree of nodes of children and parents, and we go to the image, and we go in a stable manner, in an easy way, in a readable format, and we have what we wanted. So we have suddenly created a very elegant, concise, and precise locator for this one. So now, for training purposes, let's do the same thing with another element. Let's, for example, do the education button. And as you can see, for the education button, you have, once again, the span class, which is inside. Then we have the SVG, we have the A for the link. So now we have the class again, which, like we have already talked about, may not be perfect because of various reasons. So let's go up again, and suddenly we have the ID for this UL. So once again, we can start building from that one. So we can do $X, look within the whole document for a UL with an ID of buttons 05. And as we can see, we are targeting this here, this here bar. And then we just go to a href within that, because we have to target the link. So we just do within all the children, grab the A element, and here we have it. Just like that. With such an easy way of locating the element, we can do it like that. And as we have learned before, we can also like do asterisk here, and it'll still work and be able to locate it within the children elements of a tag containing an attribute of ID buttons 05, even though it is so far deep into the hierarchy, and even though it does not hold a uniquely identifying element on its own. And so for the last trial for this skill, let's go down to the YouTube and Instagram links. Let's grab the Instagram links. And you should too. You should subscribe. So we have the Instagram. And here we can use a different attribute. So we have this use xlink. All right. So let's go up again. SVG. Okay, let's go up again. And we have the A element. So this is what we are looking for, because we are looking for the link, the A href. And again, we have a class. We have the href, which, as we have already talked, is not really perfect. And we also have the area label, which is for providing accessibility for like screen readers, for people who are visually impaired and can't see the icons or the elements or on the website. So we have something that should be pretty stable, because it's an Instagram link. So the Instagram text, it sounds like something that is pretty stable. So let's grab it. We have the area label. So we can do, once again, let's clear our console. And we have we have $X. Look within the whole document for a tag, which contains an area label attribute. Once again, remember, for XPath, all the attributes are created equal, so it doesn't matter if it's ID, class, or other things. You are addressing it in the same way, in square brackets with an @ symbol. So you have the area label of Instagram. And as you can see, just like that, we have located the element. And we have it. We did not need to use any hierarchies with like going up or down. We did not use any indexing. We just used the area label of the A element, and we have successfully identified the one that we were looking for. So that's perfect. And before we go to the methods that XPath provides us, because this will also allow us to do some powerful stuff with XPath, let's also see how we can go up the hierarchy. Because for now, we have only been going down the hierarchy. We have been trying to locate an anchor point and then to go down that rabbit hole through the children. So let's first of all try to get something maybe like the image here. Yeah, okay, so it's not very far deep, so it's going to be a good one for a presentation. We can do copy, full XPath, $X, and we have the image. So as you may remember from the first slide that we did on the whiteboard, the dot element actually means the node that we are currently at. So if we have the image and we go /dot, it means this specific node that we are at here. And we can go again /dot. It means we are not moving from the place that we are at. It won't really be useful for you for now because it usually comes into play at more hardcore versions of locators, which honestly you won't probably ever see in production. So you shouldn't really be like too disoriented by that. But it's just worth to know it that you can do dot, but you can also do 2 dots. And as you can see, we have moved to the span. We were at the image, we did 2 dots, and we moved to the parent, so to the span. And we can do, again, for example, /dot, and we are back at the same node. If we do this, then this and this is the very same node that we are pointing to. But you can also do even crazier things, like you can go 2 up, and then 3 up, and 4 up, and 5 up, and so on. And we can actually go all the way back to the root node. It may be of interest to you because, like you remember, in our strategy, we were using the parents for our anchor points. So we were using nodes which did feature some kind of unique way of identifying, be it ID or area label or class for a moment. We did use stuff like that, but then we still traverse that tree down to the children. But sometimes it may be that the thing you are trying to target is actually above something that you have a way of uniquely identifying. In this situation, you use something that is deeper down the tree as your anchor point, and you use the double dot operator to go up to the parent. And in this way, there is no like law telling you to always locate something higher up the tree and then go down. You can very well locate something that is down the tree and go up. If that's easier, if that's more stable, then you do you. There is no way of stopping you from that. So I really recommend to keep that in mind and to actually be aware that you may also go from the children up to the parents. You are not really made to only go down the tree. So yeah, that's a thing that you should keep in mind. And now the last thing before we jump to the methods is one more cheat code that I can give you. So let's once again go to this image that, as you remember, we created this elegant locator for. So far, we've only been using copy and copy full XPath to show that while we can use the full tree traversal for that, it is not really ideal. But as you can see, there is also the option of copy XPath and not the full XPath. And if you choose that, this will actually give you a very nice selector. And so once again, $X. And as you can see, we have a slight problem with the quotes that I talked about before. It told us that we have a syntax error because it did not really know what to do with it, because it looked like an open and close code. XPath is not really too bright with that. So you need to have, like I said, probably separate types of quotes to mitigate such situations. And we have this image. And if you remember, the XPath that we came up with wasn't really too different from that one. In the eventual one, we just got rid of span and changed it to double forward slash, and that was it. But for the most part, it was pretty similar. And so this is the last thing that I would like you to know about the tools from the browser, that you can also try to do that if you are at a pickle, if you are not really too sure what to do, because the element is in such a place in the tree hierarchy that it doesn't look like there is anything that you can like try to target immediately. Then I would suggest you to try and copy the XPath, not the full XPath, because the full XPath is very rarely of much use to you, but the XPath, and try to work with that, because very often you'll find that it is pretty fine. It's an okay way of identifying the elements. Even if it's not the most optimized solution, you can just fine tweak it, and for sure, going from this to something shorter, like getting rid of the span or providing the div, removing the div and stuff like that, it's way faster than doing it from the full tree that we were working with before. So I really recommend keeping that in mind, that you can do it like that. I called it cheating, but of course you shouldn't really like be too concerned with that. It's not like you are getting any like points for being extra clever. You should just do it in such a way that it's the easier for you and the most portable, correct, and elegant for the whole project. So you shouldn't really like feel your ego being hurt because you used the copy XPath. You should use the copy XPath because it just makes it easier. So why not use it? And if there is no way for you to immediately see how to grab an ID or grab a class name or something like that, or you think like that there should be an easy way of locating that element, but I just can't wrap my head around that and I don't know what to do, you should just copy the XPath the browser suggests you. It's more often than not, it's pretty usable. And if it's not perfect and you want perfect, you can always fine tweak it and it'll be way faster. Now that you know how to do it, how to build it by hand, when you can both build it by hand and you have the capabilities of your browser to build in a more optimized fashion, you can just bring both of these together. And in such a situation, it'll be way easier, quicker, and more optimized, both for your process and for the eventual result. So I really recommend taking use of that and take advantage of the locators that the browser may be able to generate for you, and then to just try and fine tweak those. And for the last chapter of today's video, we are going to jump into one of the most fun, I would say, elements of the capabilities of XPath, the methods, which can be used. They are a little more advanced, so we won't get too deep into them. We'll just cover the basic one or two. But I just want to show you what you can do. And if you want to, you can do further reading, or you can wait for some video that we do on more advanced topics in XPath. But they are still important to know that you can do stuff like that. So we will just cover it in a second to show you how to actually use methods, which is something that you can use for CSS selectors, for example. All right, and for the final section of today's video, we are going to do a very brief look at the functions that XPath may provide to us. And they are a lot of fun, and they allow you to do a set of very elaborate actions that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So first of all, let's use a text function. So far we have been trying to locate using the attribute. Sometimes it is not really feasible. It is not elegant. It is not ideal. It is not possible. You name it. But for one reason or another, you may want to use the text of something, which is not always contained within an attribute itself. So for example, when we take this button, you can see that we have the text more here inside, and it is not really an attribute. You can't really do add something equals more, because what that something would even be, it's not contained in the span node. It is not really an attribute within this one. So it is a separate thing. It is a text inside, and we have a text function with an XPath. So we can just do, once again, good old friend $X, and within the whole page, look for any element, and now we do the function. So inside square bracket, once again, if we want to filter, always use the square bracket. So let's, within the square bracket, let's do text equals more. And as you can see, we have the span element that contains the more. And since we know how to go to the parent, we can just do /////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////// button. And as you can see, the buttons that before we used to navigate to using the ID, so we got the anchor higher up in the hierarchy and we went down. Now we used our newly acquired knowledge of going up the hierarchy, and we actually used the text of more to locate this specific span and to go one level above it to the button. And now we have also a pretty nice locator which utilizes the bidirectionality of XPath and allows us to go one level up. Of course, you may have your doubts about whether this is the most elegant and stable way of handling this, because we are using anything that contains the text that has the text equal to more. If we had more buttons that read more or stuff like that, then it wouldn't really be that beautiful. But for now, this is just for exercise purposes. So I think you get the gist of it, that in this situation, we're able to also localize something by going up and by utilizing the text method. And the text method can actually be also used in be used together with other functions to look for substrings and stuff like that. But before we go to that, to illustrate the point that I made a moment ago, for example, let's do education instead of more, where when you do something like that, you get 2 hits, because both this one, the button, has the education within the span, like we had a moment before, but also the header text has education in its text value. So this is just to illustrate that it's not the perfect locator, because it may introduce some ambiguity, but maybe that's what you're looking for. Maybe you want to, it's not that you always want to target one specific element. Sometimes you want to target a set of elements which share a common value. So in this situation, they share the text value of education, and you can target both of them. All right, so now let's maybe jump to the contains. So for the contains function, for example, let's say that we want to target all the elements that contain the WH, capital W, lowercase h, be it text, button, whatever. So let's just do $x. Once again, we hit any element within the DOM hierarchy, and to filter it, we do contains, and contains takes 2 parameters. First of all, it takes what it's looking for, like it is looking for an attribute, is it looking for something else, and secondly, what value it's looking for. So in this situation, we do contains text. We know how text works already, and the second parameter is going to be WH. Now let's just close all the brackets, and we can see that we have this because it's who, we have this because that's what we do, and that's this because it's what we do. So as you can see, it correctly targets all the 3 of these elements. But as I said, you can also use contains for other attributes. You can, for example, let's check this one. This will be a good demonstration. You can see that these buttons that move us throughout the page, apart from the submit button, because the submit button has its separate action, they all feature the hashtag sign at the beginning. And the reason for that is that they are just ways to go through to another section within the website. And so we may want to, because if we do something like that, $X, and we just do and that's it, we get all the buttons, and we also get like the buttons for Instagram, YouTube, and these are buttons which are external. And what happens if we want only the buttons that navigate us throughout the site, but they don't really take us out of the website? And for that, we can use contains. So we can do that. We take all the A elements, which contain within the href tag attribute, because href attribute determines where the link is pointing. So this is the first parameter for the contains function. So within the href, we are looking for the hashtag. And when we do that, we have the filtered list, which only features the buttons that take us somewhere on the website. So as you can see, the difference between this and this array is that this is 2 links less, because it does not have the links that take us to external places. And so we can use contains like that. And we can also use contains for things like class names, for example. So you can see that this UL, for example, it has a style 1 and an icons. So you can do, we take all the elements on the website which contain the class attribute of style, for example, style 1, just like that element. And as you can see, we have a lot of elements which all have as one, or the only one, or one or of many, a class of style 1. This is not like the perfect way still to tackle space separated classes, because you may have a situation where the names would collide still. But like I said, I'm not going to go into that now, and you shouldn't really be worried about that. You should just know that there is a way to handle it even better if you want to handle space separated classes. But for many situations, this will be enough, and you shouldn't now, when you are just learning XPath, worry about that. You should just know that you can use contains either in conjunction with text or other functions to target substrings, or together with attribute names, so that you can tackle substrings within the specific attribute. And for the final presentation, let's just do one more maybe. So let's just see that we also have other types of string manipulation things that we can do. We can also look for, apart from just looking for text, which just tries to match it perfectly. Apart from looking for contains, so that just takes a substring wherever it is. We can also do starts with or ends with, and then just check the specific part of a given string. So for example, you can do, let's just tackle this one again. So we can do $X. Let's take any node which starts with, this is a function again, so it takes, once again, like the ones that came before, 2 parameters. So let's take text, and let's say what should be what it's looking for. And once again, it finds what we do and what we do, because they both start with what. So even if we had like education here, it wouldn't really find it. It will locate it, because it does not start with the word what. And lastly, because I think we can skip the ends with, it's a little tricky because it's not really supported in every version of XPath, and you may have more headache than advantage with it. But if it works similarly to start with. And for the last part, let's just see some quick ones. Like, for example, you have the last function that you can use. So where, for example, when we had stuff like, for example, div, if you want to target the very last one, regardless of the length of the array, because you can't really do div number 42 because, I mean, you can, but if there's only 5 divs and still want the last one, then directly indexing the last one is not going to be of much use. So you can just go div last, and like we talked about before, remember to have this inside the bracket. And as you can see, this is the last one, which is the same one as in the array before. It just comes as the last node, so it may not be the last one on the page, but it may be the last node within the DOM hierarchy. And similarly, you can also do count. So you can also do, for example, stuff like, let's take all the divs for which the count of div, so the children divs, is greater than 3, for example. So in this situation, we are targeting all the divs which are such that they contain at least 3 other divs. And so this is the form and the one overarching div which contains all the other ones. So this just gives us all the divs which contain at least 3 divs as the immediate children. So it does not really go like deeper, it just goes one level down. And we can spend the whole week talking about all the functions that XPath provides. I was just showing them to you to show you that there is a possibility of utilizing the functions. For 99% of scenarios, you are going to be sticking with text and contains. But I just wanted to briefly show you the other ones, not for you to memorize them, but for allowing you to see that there's a lot of powerful different variations that you can do with utilizing the functions and the XPath together and chaining all of these functionalities within the expressions of XPath. So don't really worry about remembering all of this stuff. You can always look it up. Just know that there are things like that which you can utilize and which you should be able to find when you need them and to actually use them to locate the elements that you want. So don't really fret too much. Those are just for presentation, but try and spend some time with text and contains because these ones you are going to be using quite a lot. And now let's jump back to our whiteboard for the final summary of today's lesson. All right, so welcome back to our whiteboard, which you may remember from the beginnings of this lesson. So let's, maybe even we can add to our list also the asterisk that we talked about. So this is the wildcard. Match any. All right, so this is the full list of the all the important stuff that we have talked about today, as far as the most basic syntax goes. And now let's jump to the summary. All right. So first of all, XPath is bi-directional, and you should make use of it. Like we talked, we are able to traverse the DOM hierarchy both up and down using XPath, and you should be able to make use of it in your work and in your learning. So always remember that you are not limited to going down the tree. You can always go up, down, you can go up and down. Usually there's no way to do a roller coaster ride, but you can still do that. Like we have presented in the lesson that you can even like ping pong between two notes back and forth if that's your jazz. So you can always do that. And like jokes aside, it is a very important element of XPath, which CSS locators don't have, and you will see that in the CSS locators selectors crash course. So this is a bidirectional way of traversing the DOM hierarchy, and you should make use of it. Secondly, you should remember to pick an anchor and go from there. So you should remember that even though you can traverse the whole tree, even though you can go from the root down to the specific node that you need, in most situations, this is not going to be the best way. It is not going to be elegant. It is not going to be stable. It is not going to be fast, certainly, but like that's the least of your problems when you are doing this. It is not going to be human readable. It is not going to work well with changes that are definitely going to happen to the application sooner or later. So you should pick an anchor, and the anchor should ideally be uniquely identifiable. So ideally uniquely identifiable. So that's the ideal situation when you use an ID or a specific testing tag. But even if it's not the case, then you should still make the anchor as specifically defined as it is possible without like the quality, the overall quality of the expression to take a hit on that. The third thing is to make use of the browser's tools. So by that, I mean the copy XPath. So like I said, don't treat this as cheating. Treat this as a tool in your toolbelt that makes the process more streamlined and less error prone and quicker, both for you to develop and for the eventual testing framework to use. So try to utilize that, and when you are not sure, and even if you feel like you are sure, try to compare to what the browser recommends you, and to compare and to think. This is also a good thought experiment to very often to check the XPath that the browser presents you, and if yours differs very drastically from that one, you should try and think why that happened. Why mine is so different? Is it really better? Why is the browser recommending something like this and not something like that? Number 4 is to get accustomed to the text and contains functions. So like I said, these two are, lo and behold, the most important ones that you are going to come across, and you are going to use them in your everyday work. A lot of the other ones you are not going to use, and you may think of them as more of interview questions than something that is going to be used in the eventual project in the end. So I would not really get too invested in learning everything. Like I always say, try to learn the bare minimum for you to be comfortable, and learn to know where to look for the rest. That's the overarching theme of this channel as a whole, to not get overburdened with your notion that you should learn everything. You should not. You should learn the most important tools of the trade and be able to locate the other ones. So just get accustomed to the text and contains functions, and remember that there are other ones too, but don't try to learn them by heart. You are not going to be reciting them, so don't worry about that. And this brings us to the final point, which, like I said, is pretty similar to the point that I try to make in every video, which is learn the MVP, so the minimal viable product, and get to know the basics. Look up the rest. So this is one thought that I always try to convey in my videos, is that you should learn the minimum to be comfortable and to be able to tackle the problems in such a way that you feel confident, and your confidence should be reliant on the thing, on the fact that you know the MVP, the minimum viable product, you know the basics, you know how to navigate your way through this stuff, but you should be able to look up the rest and not waste your time trying to learn the rest. Because the important thing is to be comfortable in your lack of knowledge just as much as it is to be comfortable in your knowledge. You are not going to be perfect at remembering all of this, and you should not even strive for that, because this is a waste of your time. You should be able to know how the XPath is syntactically structured. You should know what the things that we talked about before, how they work. You should know your slashes, double slashes, dot, double dot, at. You should know the asterisk. You should know how they are, how they all can work together. You should know your square brackets and stuff like that. You should know that there are some functions, but that's it. You should be able to know those things and to make use of them, but not to then spend months trying to work out all the functions that are present in XPath. Even those that I have presented you today, many of them were just as a way of further learning and just something to bring your interest up, but not really something that you should really spend like now 5 weeks trying to learn the ins and outs of every function and which version of XPath supported and stuff like that. You shouldn't strive for that. So don't waste your time on that. Just learn the MVP and spend your time on practicing. That's the most important thing, and that's the one final point that I would like to leave you with, which is number 6. Practice on your own. And there is no thing that is more important than practicing. So when you learn stuff from this video, you should go and try and practice on the Testeroni website, practice on the websites that you frequent every day, practice on your company's website, practice on your private website, practice on google.com, practice on anything, because there is no better way to see what is actually easy and what isn't, what causes some trouble and what doesn't, what helps you with creating good and elegant and portable locators, and what like creates headache. There is no better way to learn all of these things than to practice. So I beg you, if you have one thing to learn from this video, it is learn the basics and then dive into the developer console on your own and try to locate some elements, because there is no better way to feel connected with the way that XPath works than to actually do it on your own. So don't waste your time trying to learn everything from documentation. Use your time to practice. And if you are interested in stuff like all the other functions that we were talking about today, and like 100 of other ones that we didn't, and some more advanced things like axes and stuff like that, and more advanced manipulation of children-parent relationship within the tree structure, leave a comment below. I think sometimes in the future, there will be an episode or more advanced XPath tricks and tips. So this will come one day. Also, I will recommend finding some XPath cheat sheet online, so you don't have to look up every specific function and every specific functionality of the language. I think that in the future we will have something from Tesseroni ready, so some kind of a handout with XPath and other meta languages cheat sheets. But for now, I just recommend you to go to go to Google and find some cheat sheets to have a way of quickly referring to different stuff that may not be second nature to you yet, if you want to have something at hand. But like I said, first and foremost, practice on your own. Even if you find a cheat sheet, don't try to learn it by heart. Just take it with you and go on an adventure. Try and locate some elements. Thank you very much for your attention for this video. I hope you have learned a bunch of things. I will see you on the next video, and I wish you all the best of luck in practicing XPath on your own. Keep on rocking.